Hey folks, welcome back to West Virginia Cryptids and Strange Encounters. Do you like giants? You don't want to miss this. Stay tuned. Today I'm in Marion County, West Virginia, in a town called Reesville. What you see behind me is a bridge that crosses the mouth of the Paw Paw Creek that dumps into the Monongahela River. The Monongahela River is a river that is formed by the convergence of the Tiger and the West Fork River. At that convergence, there was what is called the Macadam Road. That supposedly native settlers had built this road years and years and years ago. That road supposedly ran from that convergence to an area down the road here called Newport, which is now Catawba. The interesting thing about that road is it was also called the Mussel Shell Road. It was made from stacked stone and crushed mussel shells. It was said to be 14 inches thick and 9 feet wide. Not only is it interesting, but the connection with giant skeletons found along that road is what has sparked my interest to look into it. During the construction of the first bridge across the Paw Paw Creek here, they found what said 3 giant skeletons reaching anywhere from 7 to 8 feet. They were examined, supposedly by Dr. Zedekiah Kidwell, and reburied in what they call the Jollof Cemetery. Well, after some looking around, some investigating, some research, I can't find a Jollof Cemetery here in Reesville, but I think I might know where they're at. So join me. Let's go find them. Welcome to what I believe is the most important stop on this adventure to finding the giants, the Fairmont City Cemetery. Let's go in and I'll show you why. The reason I find this cemetery very important for the first step of finding these giants, after some research and some history digging, and wanting to know if Dr. Kidwell that supposedly examined the giants actually did exist. Well, through a little bit of digging at the local library and a few other places, he exists, and he's right here in this cemetery. Let me introduce you to Dr. Zedekiah Kidwell. Say hello to Zedekiah Kidwell, or Dr. Zedekiah Kidwell. Born January 14th, January 4th, 1814. Died April 26, 1872. If the giants did exist, this is the fellow supposedly examined them before they were reburied. They say in the Jollof Cemetery, but I'll got a little different thoughts on that. Let me show you why. I'm now at the next stop that I would like to share with you all. As you can see, I'm in another cemetery. I'm actually in the Prickett Cemetery near Prickett's Fort. The stones here you see behind me have jollof on them. I come across them one time while I was like tracking the macadam road. Jeremiah Prickett mentions it, or is said to have mentioned it, running between the cemetery, the Prickett Cemetery, and the creek. Well, just right over here is the creek. And I'm in the cemetery. Whether the road ran through there or not, I can't tell you. There's no sign of it that I can tell now. But after a little bit more research and the few things I come across, after being excited, thinking maybe I found where these giants are at, I figured maybe they're just in the jollof plot of the Prickett Cemetery, which is not in Reesville, which, you know, even though it mentions Reesville, it actually says in parentheses, Reesville Jollof Cemetery. This cemetery is somewhat across the river, on the other side of the river from Reesville. So I don't believe they're here, but I believe this is the next step in finding them. So let's go on to the last step. Well, we're at our next stop. As you can see behind me is the Mon River. What you see running up this way is Little Creek. It also is on this side as well. Little Creek is where they say the macadam road ended. This is very important to me, or very, a step in finding these giant skeletons to me, because as I looked into the macadam road a little bit more, there was a couple things that come about through my research that leads me to believe they're here nearby. The skeletons, I mean. One of the things was a map that I come across. And in that map, there is a plot of land that is called the Jollof homestead, which is what you see behind me. And it is actually still inhabited by Jollof descendants. Not only is that Jollof land, but on that Jollof land, there's a mound. How I come to find out about the mound is when I tracked the land down, I stopped, talked to one of the residents that lived there, asked him if there was a Jollof cemetery on the land. He told me no. The only thing was there was the Indian burial mound, which is right behind his house. So I found that extremely interesting. So after talking to him for a little while, I said, I told him what I was looking for, and he's like, he's never heard the story. And I was like, okay, then I'll be on my way. But as I was leaving his driveway, he stopped me. And he said, hey, by the way, there's a cemetery across the creek up there on the hill. He said, it's not on Jollof land, but there's a cemetery. So I went to that cemetery. And that's where I'll take you next. Welcome to Catawba Cemetery. As you can see, most of the stones here are more of a modern, type of stone. When I first seen that, I was a little disappointed because I was hoping it was an older cemetery. But I started walking around, when I come up here the first time, and you can't really see it now, but there's a really large dead stub of a large tree back there that was probably, 12, 15 feet tall when I was here the first time. that caught my eye, so I started walking in that direction. So I started noticing older stones, and that kind of piqued my interest. And then I find wooden markers, which are definitely, piquing my interest. And sandstone markers, which, tells me this is an older cemetery. And that's when I caught first glimpse of the jollof name as I walked toward this stub here. Some of the oldest stones here are jollof. Okay, some of you may say just because I found a jollof plot in this cemetery doesn't mean the skeletons are here. Let me give you some reasoning why I think they might be here. One, this is an older plot. Two, the little creek, Macadam Road, supposedly ends at the little creek. Three, the mound, supposedly an Indian burial mound. And then there's 2 points which I haven't told you about. One of them is looking deeper into Mr. Kidwell's life, history, or bio, whatever you want to call it. And it mentions him being a member of the MP Church, a very respected member of the MP Church. For some reason, that stuck out to me. I couldn't figure it out at first, and I kind of was stuck on it, and then it hit me. The map that I found, which showed Little Creek and the area of Newport, Catawba, and the jollof plot, or the jollof land. Well, right beside that jollof land is MP Church. So, if Dr. Kidwell did examine giant skeletons, and they are buried in the Jollof Cemetery, or supposed Jollof Cemetery, I think they're here. So many points lead to this cemetery, or at least this area. I want to look into it a little further, because there's a lot more details with other giant skeletons that were found in the areas, or the local area. So it's an ongoing investigation, and I hope you guys enjoyed what I brought to you, and it's on next adventure.